The night Mirella left, it was raining so hard that she could barely see the road ahead of her. She carried one bag. Inside it were a few sets of clothes, some money she had saved over many months, and a small photograph she could not bring herself to leave behind. She did not cry. She had told herself, very firmly, that she would not cry. And she kept that promise, at least until she reached the bus station, sat down on a cold plastic seat, and felt the full weight of what her life had just become. She was 23 years old. She was alone, and she was going to have a baby. 3 weeks earlier, everything had been different. She had believed, truly believed, that Caden loved her. They had known each other for 2 years. She had grown up on the edge of his family's territory, a quiet girl with a talent for healing and a habit of noticing things others missed. Caden had been drawn to that. He had told her she was the only person who made him feel like himself, not like a leader, not like a future king, just himself. She had believed every word. Then his family announced his engagement to another woman. It was a political arrangement, they said, a matter of duty. The other woman came from a powerful family, the kind of family that could strengthen alliances and secure futures. Mirella came from nowhere important. She had no title, no connections, no strategic value. When Caden told her the news, he could not meet her eyes. He said he was sorry. He said he had no choice. He said that what they had was real, but that some things were bigger than feelings. She had nodded very carefully. She had said she understood, and then she had gone home and sat very still for a long time, thinking about the small test she had taken that morning, and what it meant now. She never told him. The bus took her to a city called Greenvale, far from everything she had known. It was a human city, ordinary and busy, full of people who had no idea what her world was like. That was exactly what she wanted. She found a small apartment on the 4th floor of an old building. The windows were drafty, and the hot water took a long time to arrive each morning, but it was hers. She found work at a small shop that sold herbs and natural remedies. Her healing knowledge was useful, even in this world. She told her employer she was good with plants and people. She was not wrong. The months passed slowly. Her body changed. She read every book she could find. She saved every bit of money she could spare. She called no one from her old life. She built something small and careful, and entirely her own. Her son was born on a rainy Tuesday morning in early spring. She named him Eli. He had dark eyes that seemed too serious for a newborn, and small hands that gripped her finger like they had no intention of letting go. She sat in the hospital bed and looked at him for a very long time. She thought about the life ahead of them, the difficulty of it, the loneliness of it, the absolute lack of anyone to help carry it. And then, she looked at his face again, and felt something settle inside her, a kind of quiet decision. She would give him everything she had. That would have to be enough. It was not easy. The early years were the hardest of her life. She worked long hours, and came home exhausted to a baby who needed feeding, and holding, and singing to sleep. There were nights when she ate plain rice because money was tight, and she told herself it was fine, while her son had something better. There were mornings when she was so tired she could not think clearly, and she stood in the kitchen with a cup of cold tea, and just breathed until she felt ready to begin again. But she did begin again. Every single morning, she began again. Eli grew, with a quickness that amazed her. By 2, he was asking questions she could not always answer. By 3, he was making small observations about people that turned out to be exactly right. He was gentle with animals and generous with his things, and possessed of a laugh so warm that strangers on the street would smile when they heard it. He was her whole world, and she carried that world with steady hands. She told him his father was not in their lives. She did not say anything cruel. She did not fill the boy with anger or bitterness. She simply said that sometimes families look different, and that their family, just the 2 of them, was complete and real and full of love. Eli seemed to accept this, the way children accept the things they have always known. He did not ask many questions. He trusted her. She was grateful for that trust every single day. 4 years after she had left, Caden Ashvale arrived in Greenvale. He was there for a meeting between the Pack Council and the human-adjacent community. It was the kind of formal, serious gathering that required his presence. He came with a small group of people, stayed in a quiet hotel near the Civic Center, and planned to leave within 2 days. His life had changed significantly in the years since Mirella had gone. The engagement to Seraphine had gone ahead, and the marriage had followed, and then, after 2 years of cold silence and mutual disappointment, it had ended. She had left him with no anger and no warmth. Just a signed document and a farewell that felt like a door closing on an empty room. He had spent time after that trying to understand what he actually wanted from his life. He had been a good leader. He had been responsible and strong and fair. But he had not been happy, and increasingly, when he sat alone and was honest with himself, he thought about a girl with healer's hands and a laugh like running water, and he wondered what she was doing, and whether she was well. He had tried to find her, quietly, without making it official. Every search had come back with nothing. Mirella Voss had disappeared completely, and the world had offered him no trail to follow. He was walking through the corridor of the Civic Center on the first day of the meetings when he turned a corner and stopped. She was there, standing near a window, talking to a woman with a clipboard, completely absorbed in the conversation. She was different, older, calmer, with something in her posture that had not been there before. A kind of strength that came not from youth or hope, but from having actually survived something difficult. And beside her, holding the edge of her jacket with one small hand, was a boy. Caden stood very still. The boy looked up at that moment, the way children sometimes do when they feel someone watching them. He had dark, serious eyes. Familiar eyes. Mirella turned a second later. She saw him. Something moved across her face. Recognition, then alarm, then a swift and practiced calm, like a window being shut. She took the boy's hand properly and turned toward the exit with the quiet focus of someone who had decided exactly what to do. He did not call out to her in the corridor. He followed at a respectful distance and caught up with her at the stairwell door. He did not block her path. He simply stood where she could see him and said her name. She stopped. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The boy looked between them with calm, curious eyes. "Mirella," Caden said again, and his voice was not the voice of a king. It was the voice of someone who had run out of everything except honesty. "Please." She turned to face him slowly. She lifted her chin. She had the look of a woman who had built herself from scratch and was not about to let anyone knock that work down. "What do you want?" she asked. "To talk." He paused. "To understand." She was quiet for a long moment. Then she looked down at her son, who was watching the exchange with the serious attention of a child who understands more than adults expect. "Not here," she said finally. "Not like this." They found a small cafe nearby. Eli sat between them with a glass of warm milk and a biscuit, and he ate with the focused calm of someone who had decided the situation was interesting, but not alarming. Mirella kept her hands flat on the table. Caden kept his eyes on her face. She told him the truth. All of it. She had not planned to. She had imagined, if this moment ever came, that she would be cold and brief and give nothing away. But sitting across from him, she found that she was simply too tired to pretend. She told him about the test she had taken the morning he gave her the news. She told him about the bus to Greenvale, the small apartment, the drafty windows. She told him about the years, the hard ones, and the good ones, and she watched his face while she spoke. He did not interrupt. He did not defend himself. He listened with the kind of attention that is very rare in powerful people, complete and still and undefended. When she finished, he was quiet for a while. Then he said, "I am sorry," not as an explanation, not as something that fixes anything, just, "I am sorry." She nodded once. She did not say it was fine, because it was not fine, but she believed him. Eli, who had finished his biscuit, looked at Caden with direct and evaluating eyes. "Do you know my mum from before?" he asked. "Yes," Caden said carefully, "from a long time ago." "She never talks about before," Eli said, with the matter-of-fact observation of a child stating a weather condition. "No," Caden agreed. "I think before was hard for her." Eli considered this seriously. Then he picked up the last piece of his biscuit and offered half to Caden. It was, for a 4-year-old, a significant gesture of goodwill. Caden accepted it. What followed was not quick or simple. Nothing about their situation allowed for quick or simple. Mirella set the terms, and they were careful terms, designed to protect her son first and everything else second. There would be slow introductions. There would be trust built in small pieces, not assumed or demanded. Caden agreed to every condition without argument. He understood, clearly and without self-pity, that he had no right to ask for more than she was willing to give. He showed up. That was the thing she had not entirely expected. Every visit, on time, every promise, kept. He drove 300 miles on weekends without complaint. He learned which foods Eli liked and which ones he refused, with deep moral conviction. He sat on the floor and built things from wooden blocks and did not check his phone. He was patient in a way she had not seen from him before, a different kind of patience than the controlled calm of leadership. This was something softer, something chosen. And slowly, without Morella intending it or planning for it, she began to let herself breathe around him again. There were still hard conversations, real ones, that went late into the night and left both of them tired and honest in ways that were uncomfortable. She told him what his absence had cost her, not to punish him, but because it was true and it deserved to be said. He listened every time. He did not argue or minimize. He simply received what she gave him and sat with it. In the 5th year, on the evening of Eli's school performance, a small winter play in which he played a tree with enormous dignity, they sat side by side in folding chairs in a school gymnasium that smelled of floor polish and children's energy. Eli stood very straight on the small stage, wearing a green costume that Morella had stayed up late to finish. He found their faces in the audience immediately and gave a tiny, private nod, as if confirming they were both present and accounted for. She laughed quietly at that. Caden laughed too, at the same moment, for the same reason. At some point during the performance, their hands found each other in the dark. Neither of them looked down, neither of them moved away. On a morning in the autumn of the 6th year, Caden stood before his council and his community and spoke carefully and clearly about his son. He acknowledged what had happened, the choices made, the years missed, the responsibility he had failed to carry. He did not make excuses. He introduced Eli as his heir, his son, and the person he intended to know for the rest of his life. He spoke about Morella with respect that was real and visible and could not be mistaken for performance. Morella stood at the back of the gathering. She had always been someone who stood near the edges, close enough to be useful, far enough to leave if she needed to. She heard her name in his voice, and she heard something in it that she recognized from years ago, before everything had gone wrong. Something true. She did not step forward. She did not need to. She simply stayed. On the walk home through the forest that evening, Eli held both their hands. He walked between them and talked without stopping about the trees and the stars and whether animals dreamed. Neither Morella nor Caden answered very much. They were listening to something else, to the sound of an evening that felt, quietly and without drama, like a beginning. She had raised her son alone through years that were harder than she had ever let anyone see. She had built a life from nothing, kept a promise she had made in a hospital room, and refused to become bitter about any of it. She had survived. And now, on a cool autumn evening, walking through a forest with her son between them, and a future that felt possible for the first time in a very long time, she allowed herself something she had not allowed in years. She allowed herself to hope. Eli looked up at her at that exact moment, the way he sometimes did when he sensed something shifting in the air. "Mum," he said, "are you happy?" She looked at him. She looked at the trees, golden and quiet around them. She looked, briefly, at the man walking beside her, who was looking at her, with the careful attention of someone who understood that this answer mattered more than anything else. "Yes," she said. And she meant it, fully, without reservation, without the small shadow of doubt she had carried for so long. "I really am." Eli nodded, satisfied, and went back to talking about stars. She smiled, and for the first time in 6 years, the smile reached all the way in.